interest. And the party at that time had about 600 members. So this is a party line that makes a marginal party even more marginalized, okay, in Mexico. But in 1935, August 35, the Comintern changes policy. They adopt the Popular Front, and the Mexican delegations to the Congress in Moscow, where this takes place, are given new marching orders. They're told cooperate with Cardenas, cooperate with trade union organizations, cooperate with political parties that are willing to take an anti-fascist stand, and are going to be critical of US imperialism, fascism, and so on. Okay? So drop the old line and come into a totally new one. And in particular, cooperate with, well, at that time, the ruling party in Mexico was called the PRM, the Party of the Mexican Revolution. Today, it's the PRI. Okay? But in the 30s, it had a different name. Okay? Well, 30s and part of the 40s. The goal behind this policy was to give life to the Communist Party of Mexico and to help it build ties to labor unions, to other political parties, in that way to strengthen the Popular Front, which in Mexico also had one eye always looking north to the United States. I mean, it's not just fascism, they're looking at imperialism as well. Okay? And so during these years, from August 35 until August 1939, we see the heyday of the Communist Party, I would argue, in Mexico. Its membership jumps by late 1938, yeah, late 1938 to about 30,000. That's 600 a few years before, okay? And the party actually wins a number of leadership posts in different trade unions, railroad unions, mining unions, metal workers, etc., oil workers. And they are there for the formation of a new labor confederation, just known as the CTN, okay, but it stands for the Confederation of Mexican Workers. And it was kind of like an AFL or CIO. It was more like a CIO than an AFL. But anyway, before those two were merged. Well, we won't go that way. The point being is that the communists could now play an active role in Mexican politics, and especially in progressive Mexican politics. Okay? As we'll see, what's going to put an end to that is the onset of World War II and the signing of the Nazi-Soviet Pact, or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Spanish communists were quite keen on pursuing this Popular Front line, and they did it with glee in 1935 and 1936. But in fact, they paid very little attention to the anti-Trotskyist line. So when Cardenas invites Trotsky to Mexico, gives him political refuge and asylum, it creates a sense of urgency within the Communist Party, which was more or less directed. They said, you should be urgently concerned about this, so Moscow says. Okay? The head of the Communist Party in Mexico sends a telegram to all the party organizations in which he, points out that they should challenge this, they should ask Cardenas to rescind the invitation, and he notes that Trotsky seeks to divide the proletariat in all countries and to weaken the united anti-fascist front. He would threaten the Mexican Revolution's progress by dividing the mass support upon which the present Mexican government depends for its struggle against internal and external enemies of the Mexican people. This is a Popular Front way of looking at things. In other words, this, it's a smart tactical move. But it also conveys a concern that Moscow and Mexico City had themselves, that is, Mexican communists. And that was that Trotsky's critiques of the Popular Front and the Soviet Union would actually divide workers and weaken a Popular Front. So there's a real problem here that they're trying to work through. Okay. The more immediate problem was, how did Mexican communists conduct an anti-Trotskyist campaign, given that many progressive forces in Mexico welcomed Trotsky coming to Mexico? Okay. The very people they were supposed to align with and make common cause with were among the people who said, this is really good. Cardenas did the right thing. This is a humane thing to do. The politically correct thing to do. That was a real tension for Mexican communists. Okay? And one example is this CTM, Confederation of Mexican Workers, who in early 1937 announces what it calls its line of conduct on Trotsky. And it says that, we expect affiliates to follow, we expect affiliates to attach no importance to nor engage in any public acts regarding Trotsky's presence in Mexico. And in no case were they supposed to request Trotsky's expulsion. Moscow's telling the Mexicans, get Trotsky out of the country. Work to get him out of the country. Do whatever you have to do to get him out of Mexico. Okay? So this is a real problem, and yet Moscow can offer no advice to the Mexicans on how to do this. Okay? Trotsky comes to Mexico in January 1937. In April 1937, an evaluation from the Comintern of the Mexican Communist Party basically tells them that their top priority is the Popular Front. Forge alliances with Cardenas's party, the PRM, his trade union affiliations, etc., etc. That report makes no mention of Trotsky or the anti-Trotskyist campaign. It's a very strange report in that respect. Okay? And so the Central Committee of the Communist Party in Mexico then passes a slogan, unity at all costs. Okay? In other words, this is the kind of consummation of the idea of the Popular Front. Now for Mexican communists, this was a problem. For the Comintern, the tensions between these two policies was not a problem at all. They said, look, any politically conscious and disciplined party will know how to carry out the anti-Trotskyist campaign in a way that strengthens the Popular Front. But the Mexican party was not necessarily politically conscious nor very disciplined. Okay? In May 1937, a Cuban communist, he's called an assessor, he's kind of an evaluator of the party in Mexico, points out that the leading cadres are young and not of the highest level, and they continue to suffer from the previous incorrect Trotskyist line. So, as in Spain, the influx of people into the party, and even some of the older leadership of the party, are focusing their directions on building political alliances, and they're not paying attention to this anti-Trotskyist campaign. Okay? A couple months later, when is it, September 1937, Andre Marti, who is the director of the International Brigades, that is the communist brigades in the Spanish Civil War, does an assessment of what's going on in Latin America. And when he refers to this, he says, the sectarianism and enormous ideological weakness of our parties permits Trotskyism some success. In view of the masked Trotskyist and communist parties, our Popular Front activities are paralyzed by Trotskyist activities. So for Marti, the head of the French party, and one of the most, influential people in the Comintern, he doesn't see a tension between anti-Trotskyism and the Popular Front. In fact, he sees people with bad ideological bearing, shall we call them, as Trotskyists, and they're the ones who are going to screw up the Popular Front. Okay. A few months later, October 1937, a fellow woman, once again, Vittorio Codavilla, there are a lot of Vittorios running around Mexico at this time. Vidal was a spy, very interesting. But we're going to talk about Codavilla. Okay. He had been the former Comintern representative to the Spanish party, and he is recalled to Moscow and given a job basically overlooking and overseeing the Latin American parties. Okay? He writes an assessment that says the Mexican Communist Party is doing a very good job. It's insufficiently strong, but they're doing a very good job on the Popular Front. But he points out that the party is not playing the chief role in forging support for the Spanish Republic. Okay? And then, of course, the common lament that the struggle against Trotskyism is being carried out incorrectly. Okay? A few months later, his next report shows some anxiety. Okay? Because he said the Communist Party of Mexico is now offering uncritical support of the policies of Cardenas and his government. He calls on all people to unite around President Cardenas. This wasn't what the Popular Front was supposed to be. You were supposed to ally with people, okay? You were not supposed to give up your power to them, but rather you used your alliance to influence policy, okay? You want our support in the assembly, we'll give you our support, but you give us this. You make this political promise. This was the way alliances, almost like parliamentary alliances, were supposed to work, okay? So what already by late 1937 is clear is that the Mexican party is having great success in getting active in political movements, and trade union organizations,